Hello everyone, welcome. So as you know, I'm Dr. Anandarup Goswami. I'll be discussing today about some of the topics which are in your syllabus regarding the properties of nanomaterial. So as far as our syllabus is concerned, and also as far as our coverage is concerned, as you already know that we have covered pretty much introduction to nanoscale, then we have given the definition. I'll come back to it again because it is really important. And then we talked about a little bit of importance in the context of its applications. And in the last two lectures, what we have done, we have actually gone through the history of nanomaterials. So from which point of time it was actually first synthesized or made by man. From there, we have also discussed till the recent point of time when people have actually come up with newer strategies to synthesize different kinds of nanomaterials along with their different applications. So what today we are going to do, today actually we are going to discuss about the properties of nanomaterials. So because unless we know the properties, so it is a bit difficult for us to actually identify or correlate. If you remember our first lecture where I have discussed about what we are expected to achieve, our possible outcome. There I said, hopefully at the end of the course, students will be able to correlate the properties with the applications. Okay, so that's why you need to know a little bit about the properties of nanomaterial. And so let's go to the first topic. As far as the properties are concerned, once we talk about that one, before going into the details of the properties, I just want to actually recap some of the terms that I will be using too many times during this lecture. So that's why I thought it would be a good idea for us to actually let's think about what we have learned till now. So as far as the definition of nanomaterial or nanoparticle is concerned, as you know that it refers to particle or material with sizes in the range of 1 to 100 nanometer in at least one dimension. So here this part and these parts are very important. That means it has to be between 1 to 100 nanometers in at least one of its dimension. Okay, so that's very important, and that we need to keep in mind because this will keep on coming in our subsequent lectures. So as far as the nanotechnology is concerned, it's basically the application side of the nanomaterials, the design, characterization, production and application of structures, devices and systems that take advantage of the spatial properties of the nanomaterial. So once you synthesize a nanomaterial, if we know about the properties, if we know how to characterize them, nowadays I have shown some of the examples about the sophisticated instrumentation by which you can characterize them, you can visualize them, right? So with that, once you know about the material in great details, you also know about the potential applications. Then you can apply to different fields, starting from electronics to biomedical and so on and so forth. So this is essentially the first two definitions that we learn. And as far as the examples are concerned, I have already given examples of fullerene, carbon nanotubes, graphene. So if you remember these things, when we started discussing about the history of nanomaterials, I told you these are all carbon-based materials. But historically, if you go back, then you will realize that essentially people started discussing more about nanomaterial in the context of the metal nanomaterial. It depends on the application or depends on the choice of your substrate, depends on the feasibility of the process, which material you want to choose. So in this particular context, I just wanted to highlight carbon because rest of my lecture, at least today's lecture, we are going to focus more on the metallic nanomaterials or semiconductor nanomaterials. Okay, with that, these are some of the examples. As you know that this is, we call it as 0 dimensional, this is called 1 dimensional, this is called 2 dimensional. When we name it, the reason why we name it this way, because 0 dimensional means essentially all the 3 dimensions are at the nanoscale. 1 dimension means only one of the dimensions are not at the nanoscale. So one-dimensional carbon nanotube, as we said, this diameter is at the nanoscale but not the length. Okay, this is not at the nanoscale. It could be at the nanoscale, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, so this is the carbon nanotubes that we discuss, and also as far as details discussion is needed, we have this in syllabus where you'll get to learn more about these things. Okay, so while discussing this, we also have been discussing a lot about another term which I thought I didn't define that before. So let's define that. That is actually the bulk materials. So when you talk about nanomaterials, I have been saying this in the context of, or rather in comparison with bulk materials. Now bulk materials can be defined as the materials with sizes more than 100 nanometer in all three dimensions. Please again be very specific while writing this down. It has to be nanomaterial. This one will have to be at least one dimension. But in case of bulk, everything will have to be above. All the three dimensions will have to be above 100 nanometers. Okay? So this is with that, we just wanted to know why it is so. Because as it turns out, once we have defined these two, once we know a little bit about how the structures will look like, the properties are actually very, very different. For example, this is a bulk gold. Now, if you keep on decreasing its sizes, you will reach something which is called a micro size gold. Okay? But at the end, you will go from here to this nano size gold. Once you get to that material, these are all gold nanoparticles with different sizes. Depending on its sizes at the nanoscale, their optical properties are very, very different. They show very different types of color when light is shining on them. While in the bulk, it is only one golden color or yellowish color that we actually are generally familiar with. So that's the reason why we need to really understand the difference between bulk and nano, because their properties at the nanoscale are very different. So when we talk about properties, what are the properties we can think of? We are actually looking at something which are much related to the applications. And in that context, we could find out that properties of nanomaterials are very, very different than bulk. I have given you one example. Now, here I would just like to highlight what are the properties which are kind of different than nanomaterial, than its bulk counterpart. First is melting point. The melting point in nanomaterial is in the most cases it is smaller in number than its bulk counterpart. Okay, so the enhancement of mechanical strength. I have told you that carbon nanotubes are one of the strongest materials that we have, or graphene, but there are other carbon-based material which are not at the nanoscale. In those cases, you will not find them to be as strong as the ones that we have at the nanoscale. Their optical properties are very different. We just showed you an example. Once you change the size, their color changes, their optical property changes. They absorb light at different wavelength. They emit light at different wavelength. And that's the fascinating part about nanomaterial, because you can tune them depending on the structure, depending on the shape. You can tune the properties of nanomaterial. Unusual electrical conductivity. Now, why I am not giving as if it is going to increase or decrease? Why I am not actually writing them down? Because it varies from case to case, and people have been trying to find out the reasons behind all these observed phenomena. So all the researchers, especially in physics and material science and chemistry, are primarily based on finding out the reasons behind this kind of observations. So electrical conductivity, it also changes a lot. Okay, something can be made from metallic to a semiconductor. Something can be made from insulator to a semiconductor, depending on the sizes, depending on the scales, depending on the synthetic protocols, depending on types of material that you can choose. But one thing has to remain constant, that this material that you are making, they have to be at the nanoscale. Along with that, the magnetic properties are also changing. Okay, so once we make these kind of systems, there are examples which in the bulk phase, if something is not magnetic, but at the nanoscale they can be made magnetic, because their so-called electron distribution in the material is very, very unique and very different than their bulk counterpart. During this process, because of their small sizes, while synthesis as well as in order to gain stability, they can self-purify themselves. They can come up with the very pure structures with relatively less defects, so closer to getting self-perfection. In addition to all this, because of that nanoscale, they come up with the improved reactivity. Sometimes also they do give you a better stability. Okay, so that's kind of very, very interesting to know, because all these properties which I have shown here, they are primarily related to the nanoscale of your material. If you don't have any material at the nanoscale, then you may not get this kind of difference in properties. This is essentially in bulk phase what I wanted to say. The size of the particle does matter. Okay, and don't assume that everything will behave same irrespective of their dimension, irrespective of their size, irrespective of their shape. If you are able to make a particular material at the nanoscale, their property will be very different than the bulk. Okay, so now people, as I said, people have been trying to identify what is going on, what exactly going on. So then they started posing question, what are the special characteristics of nanomaterial that are allowing them to have this kind of properties? Now there are different ways to tackle this, and there are different types of theory to actually come up with the explanation behind each of the observation that you can see here. So as far as our syllabus is concerned, and as far as most prevalent observations are concerned, this can be classified primarily into two major contributing factors. And one is called high surface area to volume ratio. Another one is called quantum confinement effect. So today what we are going to do, we are going to go into the details to understand what exactly do you mean by this kind of terms. Because it is not that once you start understanding this, you will get to know about the relation with the properties. To some extent, you need to understand little bit about at the molecular level, at the structural level, in order to correlate that kind of information to the properties. Today what we are going to do, we are going to just focus on the first one, which is high surface area to volume ratio. That's the first topic that we are going to discuss today. Okay, so let's focus on that. In order to know this, first thing that you need to know, what do you mean by surface area to volume ratio, right? As the name suggests, it's very simple. It's essentially is the surface area of a material with respect to its volume, right? So let's do a simple exercise, very simple exercise to identify this. Okay, so calculate the surface area to volume ratio of a spherical particle with diameter of 100 nanometers. So this is a spherical particle with This is the 100 nanometer diameter as I have written. Now what do we have to calculate? We have to calculate the surface area to volume ratio. So what are the things that we need to calculate? We need to calculate first surface area and we need to calculate the volume. We all know, consider this as a three-dimensional object, it's a sphere. Okay, so the volume of this is going to be 4/3 pi r cube. This is already we know from our geometry lessons, right? So with 100 nanometer of diameter, it's going to be, if diameter we can call it as d, then d cube divided by 6. If you plug in the numbers, it comes around 5.24 times 10 to the power of minus 22 meter cube. Once again, be very, very careful while writing these kind of things. Okay? Because I said 100 nanometers. That's why this 10 to the power minus 9 term came. Because our unit that we wanted to have as meter cube. What about surface area? Now surface area of this, we know that by formula it is 4 pi r square, right? So r square, if you do that, is pi d square, where d is the diameter. If you plug in these numbers, again thinking of the units, then you will get this value 3.141 times 10 to the power minus 14 meters square. Now what's next? Now we need to just divide surface area by volume. That is going to give you the surface area to volume ratio. Now you see this number. It is 0.59, 0.6, you can call it as 1 also, into 10 to the power minus 7. Okay? It should be 10 to the power 7. So please correct it. 10 to the power 7. So what does that mean? That tells a very, very important thing. It says that surface area of this particular spherical object at the nanoscale is almost, with respect to volume, it's almost 10 to the power 7 times greater. Okay, so that means this gives an approximate surface area to volume ratio of 10 to the power 7:1, which is significantly larger than a macro size particle or a bulk particle. Let's try to formulate this to actually understand what goes on once we start changing this kind of diameter. This is, if you take it as a spherical object with the diameter d, if you start changing the particle diameter from 1 nanometer, so if you start changing like that, 1,000, 10,000, 1 lakh, 1 million nanometer. Okay, so once you keep on changing this, you look at that, you know how to calculate this. By the way, this is done on nanometer, taking nanometer as a unit. Previous example that I have shown, that was meter was the unit. This one was done as taking nanometer as a unit. Okay, so in this case, if you calculate this, you see the changes. So if you calculate this, the surface area to volume ratio, you look at this number, the way it is changing. Now, just by giving you a number, it may not really be that attractive to you. Let's try to plot it. Okay, so if you plot this, it looks like this, kind of. Once you start moving from 100 nanometer to 1, the surface area to volume ratio, it increases. It increases quite significantly. And that's the beauty, that can only happen at the nanoscale. You can start, as your homework, you can start going back to do the similar thing at 1 meter, 2 meter, you will not see this kind of change. That means this ratio increases dramatically, significantly when the nanoparticle diameter drops below around 100 nanometer. And that has got something to do with the properties. And that we are going to find out. What exactly going on if you do that? So as I said, going from 100 nanometer to 1 nanometer, as the scale suggests, the surface area to volume ratio increases a lot. Okay, this tells you something about that there is something going on at the nanoscale. Okay, so now let's take another example where you don't need to have a spherical object, because not everything is going to be spherical. Okay, so let's talk about a cube. Let's say we have taken a cube. This is 1 centimeter, this is 1 centimeter. So your surface area is 6 centimeters square. Now let's divide this cube into 10 smaller cubes in one dimension. So this way 10, that way 10. So in that case, your total surface area is going to come as 60 centimeters square. Nanomaterial object where this size is 1 nanometer cubes, then its surface area is going to be this much. It's so huge as compared to the one that you started with. So that means that if we go at the nanoscale for a fixed volume, the surface area is going to increase a lot. Okay, so that means, and also in addition to that, previous example was on sphere, this one was on cube. So similarly, you can do that at home. I will give you some assignments that the ratio increases dramatically when the nanoparticle diameter drops below about 100 nanometer, that we have already seen. This particular statement holds true for cubes, which I have shown, as well as other geometrical structures. So if you have any geometrical structures, you can actually calculate the surface area to volume ratio the way you have calculated. And you will see that in all the cases, your surface area is actually quite high if your material is at the nanoscale. So now what exactly goes on? Why you need to know? This is something quite interesting. Okay, so what you are exactly doing, if you consider the previous example, here you basically are cutting this off. Once you start cutting this off, what is happening? As far as their energy is concerned, what is going on in their energy? So in this case, if you keep cutting the cubes with increasing surface area, because we have already shown you that the surface area is going to increase, the overall surface energy will increase due to the increase of number of free bonds. What does it mean? So, if you cut this part, just think about the surface. You got two surfaces. The way that you cut it, you are going to get two halves, and the two halves you got two new surfaces. This one is new, this one is also new. Now, what does it have now as compared to the previous one? You generated the new surface. Now this new surface, if you look at this surface atom, in this case, in this particular case, what happened? When it was not cut at that time, whatever the surface atom you have here, they were inside, they were actually experiencing equal type of interaction. But the moment you cut it, now this half, this one that is in the surface is a new one. Similarly here also, you generated new surface. Okay, now these surfaces, they are very, very different. They are not the same as this surface because it was part of the big one. Now they are separated. So on this surface, what exactly happens? This surface, these particles will experience an inward shift. So this will experience, because these are the free, or sometimes it's called dangling bonds. So this free dangling bonds, what is there, that means in this surface, if you think about this surface, here these atoms, they are not experiencing anything here. Before they are experiencing the same type of interaction from at the top, at the bottom. Now suddenly it becomes loose, there is nothing here. So now whatever interaction these surface atoms are facing, they are actually coming from this one. So these bulk one, or rather the one that are inside, they will start pulling them towards themselves. So that's why there will be an inward drift of this material towards that side, for this surface toward this side. And that's why if that drift was not there, if you think of the particle diameter to be like this, now because of the drift, it's going to be a small one. So that actually have very significant so-called impact on the structure. Okay? And that will show during its melting point, during its other crystallization behavior. So along with that, there's one more thing that we have to highlight. Okay? So that part is essentially the common metallic crystal structure. If we know a little bit about, I know that you have in intermediate, you have your solid state chemistry where you have learned about this thing. So common metallic crystal structure you can have as body centered cubic, you can have as face centered cubic, you can have hexagonal close packed cubic. Now depending on which metal you are looking into, depending on their energetics, depending on their stability, they can have either of the two, or depending on the temperature, they can have there can be a change from one structure to the other structure. So most metals will have this kind of packed lattices. So silver, aluminum, copper, cobalt, lead, platinum, rhodium are normally, they generally form face-centered cubic lattice. So that means this one. Whereas magnesium, neodymium, osmium, rhenium, ruthenium, yttrium, zinc, they will form HCP. Chromium, lithium, strontium can form BCC as well as HCC depending on the formation energy. Okay? So once you have this kind of structure, why you are bringing this up? There's a very specific reason why you are bringing this up. Because now till this point we have looked into only the surface and we have calculated the surface area to volume ratio. We have talked little bit about the dangling bonds which are of high energy, okay, as compared to the bonds inside. But in addition to that, there is something else. Because of this high surface area, there is something that changes. So this is a HCP, hexagonal close packing, first full shell magic number clusters. You don't need to know a lot of things here. Only thing you need to know that if you have number of shell, only one shell in HCP, your number of atoms in a cluster is 13. Percentage of surface atoms, that means which are on the surface, there will be only one which is actually inside. So in this case the percentage of that is going to be around 92%. Once we go from one particular shell to higher shells, like this one is 5, your number of, in that context, number of atoms in cluster is 561. Look at the number of atoms on surface. It drops significantly from here to here. Now think in reverse way, okay, because we are discussing about nanomaterial. So when you have a bigger material, okay, you can consider it instead of 5 shells, you can consider it, let's say 100 shells or 1000 shells. So in that case, your percentage of surface atoms is going to be very, very less. Okay, so that's going to be really, really less. And as compared to that, if you keep on cutting them, you'll reach a point at the nanoscale where your surface atoms is going to keep on increasing. Okay, once it will keep on increasing, then eventually you will have more surface area with more surface atoms in it, and that will have a very different properties as compared to the ones which are at the bulk scale. This is essentially the same thing that I just talked about. Essentially what it says, the decreasing percentage of surface atom as cluster grows. With the bigger cluster you have less surface atoms. Okay, because most of them are inside. Once you start cutting the clusters, you are making it smaller and smaller, you will have higher surface atom percentage. Okay, so this is one example that I have shown. So where you have this is a gold nanoparticle, and I have plotted the surface to bulk ratio, and we are starting from 40 nanometers to less than 5 nanometers. Okay, so once we start that, you see in this region, surface to bulk ratio, it's still increasing. Okay, but it's not that much. But once you go below 10, it suddenly shoots up. So this B stands for bulk, A stands for surface. That means essentially this is surface, this is bulk. Okay, so now this is going to increase. So once it starts increasing, that will have a major impact on their properties. Just to give you one example again, and we'll wrap it up after that. This is the surface area, this is the gold nanometer, diameter of a gold nanoparticle. With increasing the surface area, the diameter, the observed melting point keeps on increasing. Once you start decreasing the diameter, on the other side, you will see that melting points also keeps getting decreased. The reason is, once you keep on decreasing the size, you are cutting them more and more. So you are increasing more and more dangling bonds. They are not very stable. So this overall gold nanoparticle will melt easily. Okay. So that means, to conclude, with increase in surface area to volume ratio, the percentage of surface atom increases at a faster proportion at the nanoscale. And these characteristics of nanomaterials allow them to exhibit unique thermal, mechanical, optical, electrical, chemical, and magnetic properties which are very distinct than their bulk counterparts. Okay, so this is something that is very important. Right now I discussed a little bit about high surface area to volume ratio, and I have given you some example to correlate with the properties. If you are interested in knowing more, please let me know, we can discuss further. Next class we will be talking about quantum confinement effect. As I said, just to conclude, finally, we have started discussing about properties. We will continue in the next lecture to finish up the quantum confinement effect, and then we will move on to the classification of nanomaterials. Once again, thank you. We'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.